Hello, beloved listeners. The next conversation in the Election Time with A and B series is going to be with my beloved friend Sendolo Diaminah. Sendolo is a local organizer here in North Carolina where I live as part of the Carolina Federation, and I've known Sendolo through a lot of other work. And so I wanted to talk about this moment of struggle and what it looks like from the perspective of moving local and regional strategy, not just thinking about the presidential election, which I think can take up a lot of the air. So I hope that you find this conversation as useful as I did. Let's keep learning together on how we survive and move through history in this time.
Hello, my love.
Hi, darling.
Good morning. You look so good.
I got my little place. The sun's coming in.
Exactly. I can feel there's no sun where I am right now, but well, there is sun. It's just like mad, cloudy, stormy kind of sun.
I got you. I'm beaming.
Thanks, babe. I need the beam. So I've been having these conversations with people because I felt myself, I'd be out in my like speculative fiction realm and like my imagination realm and my various realms, right? And then I feel like especially when election cycles come around, all this stuff gets kicked up to the surface. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt myself getting uncentered, decentered, and panicked and trying to trying to just figure it all out by myself inside my head. Like, oh my God, I wasn't paying attention, but now that I am, like, here's the answers. Anyway, I was like,
Sounds
oh,
fun.
it was so fun. And it wasn't calming my system, right? Like I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, like I can see, I can see a strategy. I can see a path forward, but none of that is actually tied into the people that I trust who have been moving electoral strategies while I was off writing my fiction and while I was being, I really feel myself trying to be a person, be a
Yeah.
citizen, and figure out how to move, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've witnessed that as my neighbor in Durham, that I'm like, I'm really trying not to um, put my foot where it doesn't belong. Like, I'm like, what is my lane, right? And a lot of it is, oh, I want to be an artist who is aware of the world and is in reflection of the world and is pointing people in the right directions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I was like, okay, but I do happen to know some of the smartest, most strategic people in the world who are doing these things, um, of which you are one, like way up there on my list, and who are approaching it all in very different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was like, let me just have some conversations with some really smart Black feminist people, some people are who have taught me in the past and who I think can help me. And so I've talked with several people now. I talked with Makani, I talked with
Oh, lovely.
Markia, I had a conversation. And the idea behind these conversations is like trying to ask questions, like ask a general set of questions that help us understand a little bit more about like what are the strategies that are moving? What is this moment actually about? What is possible inside of it?
Mm.
I talked to Ashley Lippert Henderson, and that was, it's just like really big minds holding big concepts. And I really wanted to talk to you because part of why I moved to Durham was actually I was excited about the way you were doing local, regional, state organizing. Like, I was like, you're up to something there that feels really important because so much about this election, I think so much more of it is actually happening down ballot and people are not paying attention to that.
Mm.
So, or people are not paying enough attention to that, which is what happens. So I wanted to bring you on for that. And I also want to bring you on because I feel like you're part of a lot of long term thinking, long term strategic
Mm.
thinking. Not just like help us come bring our eyes up from just this moment, this crisis, this intensity to like, okay, looking the longest term we can imagine. What do we see? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's all. That's the framework. Where I think we're caught up. Before we jump into the combo, how are you this morning?
All the things.
Hmm.
Um, you just gave me some news updates, but I feel like there's just so much inundating constantly going on.
Yes.
And so, yeah, these days I'm like, how am I doing? And I'm like, I need 10 minutes to be like all the different things. So,
Yeah.
part of me is, or I won't even say part, like a dimension of things that's happening for me all the time and is happening
Yeah.
this morning. is just bewilderment.
Yes.
Like, wait, what's happening? And
Yes.
I feel like I don't know what year to start this, at least since 2020. I feel like shit keeps happening, and I'm like, okay, this is the wildest thing that's ever happened in my lifetime. And
Exactly. Oh.
then
Mhm.
it's like, nope,
Oh.
we got another thing that's
Yeah.
past that. So
Concurrent.
I right,
Yes.
right. So I feel like I'm free falling. I feel confused, bewildered, surprised. Um,
Yeah.
and then there's also this like uh paradoxical side to it of just kind of like appreciation and depth.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
uh, all the things that are happening in the world, in this country, and I find myself being like, oh, every time I cook a meal and I eat it, it's just a reminder of how many things are going into keeping me well and keeping this world alive. And I'm like, oh, right. It's so easy to get caught up in the disorienting things, that the things that are like constant blessings, constant support,
Uh-huh.
I can lose track of. So I feel like I've been swimming in uh, uh, that as well. And those two things are kind of going on for me. Um, yeah, at the same time.
I love that. Um, and I feel that same duality in myself, or multiality or multiverse. Um, yeah, I keep feeling like, okay, like, you know me, I'm like, okay, I got it. Like, I got it.
Figured it
No.
out.
Okay. Got it. Okay, now I got it. Like, and then another rug. It's like, oh, are we
Yeah.
standing on a world of like a 3 billion rugs? Like, how many are gonna get pulled out from under us? I'm trying to get, I think a lot of times, I think it's Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido, I think is the person who talked about that mastery is not that you never fall over, but it's that you fall and you recover quicker.
Hmm.
And it's like you eventually can recover so quickly that like it's not even necessarily visible to your opponent or visible to someone watching. Um, and I think for a long time I was like, yeah, I gotta just and I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, like I don't have mastery around this time. And I'm letting myself like not have mastery around this time. I'm like, what it means to live inside of a new time is that both new things are available, and inside of a new crisis, it's like, oh, there's more opportunity than I can understand or see. I can't even recover yet to the perspective of opportunity. But if I can remember that I'm on new ground, then I'm like, oh, I am a student of this, of how to be in this kind of moment where
Hmm.
we are this interconnected. And as an empathetic person, I'm this interconnected to a world in crisis. I've never felt this much pain before. I've never been this aware in real time of how much is hurting. And I'm like, I think the thing I want to be best at is love. I've said that many
Hmm.
times. So I'm like, I'm trying to be masterful at loving at a mass level. And it's really stretching my heart. Like it's really stretching my capacity. So I feel that, right? Like I'm like, I feel stretched. I feel
Girl.
myself like I'm like I keep, we for those who don't know, Sendolo and I have a history of somatic practice with each other. We were students in the same lineages, and um, I keep thinking there's an exercise we did called the rondori, where it's
Hmm.
like you're standing in the middle, and first one thing and then another, then another. Everyone's coming at you with a different kind of attack or a different kind of move, and the idea is to figure out in that move, okay, what do I want to stand and fight? What do I want to let go by? What do I want to join and move with? And this has felt like one of those moments right now,
Hmm.
too,
Hmm.
where I'm just sort of like, I really respect all the people who are like, yeah, I'm running to endorse and belong and do this. And I'm like, I see that move. And I see the other move of like, no, we have to fight. We have to, I feel that. And then there's a big part of me that's just like, is what can I let go by? What actually matters right now? Like, there's a lot that I can let go by. There's a lot that I don't actually need to do something about. And then there's something that I need to do something about.
Mm.
And I think love is that work, that I'm like, people are covering a lot of the ground, and I'm trying to find ways to keep flowing love through all the gaps and all the rivulets and the connective tissue. So that's a weird answer for how I am, but it feels like I feel very extended from myself in a way. Um, but that I'm like, I'm constantly rooting. Like I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm rooting, and I'm just like pouring out what I can pull up from the ground, and then pouring back into the ground the pain. And it's just this, I guess I'm a tree. So how am I? I'm a
Tender
tree.
tree, tender
I'm a
tree.
tender tree, honey. Okay. Mm. So the first question I've been asking people is evoking my mentor, Grace Lee Boggs, who always used to ask us this. She was a Chinese American organizer who threw down with the Black labor movement in Detroit and taught us a lot and wrote a lot of books. But one of the things she would always ask us is, what time is it on the clock of the world? And I wanted to ask you this question, from your vantage point, from your organizing stance, from your humanity. What time is it on the clock of the world?
Well, I like what you were saying earlier around being in your lane. I feel like my attention has been in this place on this land in this country, specifically in North Carolina. So I haven't been
Mm.
tracking kind of the world as a whole.
Uh-huh.
Um, but something that feels true to me about this moment in this country is we're in a time of endings.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
uh, I think we're looking at things unraveling, becoming undone.
Mhm.
And that's why so many unprecedented, unexpected things keep happening, right? That we have these frameworks for how things used to be, and we're like, oh yeah, this is how an
Mhm.
election works, or this is how uh, we're going to figure out who's going to be the nominee, or this is how we build power, or this is how, right? Like these weird paradoxes of the incredibly difficult times that we're in, and then the fantastic, incredible organizing that's happening with like the uncommitted movement or unions surging, or like
Yes.
so yeah, I feel like the time that we're in is I don't know, dusk is kind of coming to mind,
Mhm.
where it's not night yet,
Mhm.
like uh I don't think things are undone to the degree that they are going to be.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there's
Yeah.
still more unraveling.
Oh, yes. I think so too.
Um, but we're in this period where it's clear that the sun is going down. It's
Mhm.
clear. And things are hazy, right? Like
Mhm.
there's a difficulty in sharp perception um in this period.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind. How does that resonate for you?
It deeply, it deeply resonates for me, I think, um, you know, because there's this feeling of dread.
Mm,
There's this feeling of dread that I have experienced in a lot of people, and I can feel it in myself, like something's coming. And it reminds me of when I used to be really scared of the night, right? Like I used
mm,
to be scared of the dark. I used to be scared of nighttime, especially outside. I was like, I don't know about this. And like the idea that humans lived outside in the dark, lived in tents, lived in teepees, lived in other formations that were just like in the dark, in the world. I was like, what? Like that's terrifying. And I've really shifted my relationship to darkness. I've really shifted my relationship to the night, and even the night outside. Like I push myself to go outside, to sit outside in my yard, to be under the stars. And I'm like, oh, it's beautiful out here
mm,
without the protection of the light and the walls and all that. But it doesn't feel like that all the time. And some nights feel really frightening still. And so I feel like the dusk metaphor is like, bam, yes, like
mm,
something's coming. And like based on the systems I was raised in and what I was told was safety, it feels really scary. And based on what I know of the world and of people, there's still so much possibility, and maybe it's even more beautiful. But it's hard to understand it. So I do try to keep trying to hold open the space of like something more beautiful is often outside of safety, outside of what we've been
Hmm.
told is safety.
Hmm.
But you have to wild yourself a bit to get there. And I think like, dusk when you're paying attention, I'm like, oh, the mosquitoes are coming. Oh, but here come the bats and the dragonflies and
Right,
like other. I
right.
was like, I'm so scared. And then here comes something in the system of the world. And so I keep wondering what we are in that system, you know? I'm like, are we the bats? Are we the dragonflies? Are we the mosquitoes? Are we the light itself falling? Are we the stars? Like, where are we? So,
Hmm.
um, and then I'll have these moments of like I love what you're uplifting. But I have these moments of great hope where I'm like, look at us murmurate, look at us move together. And I can see that happening. And then, yeah, and then the news will come and it's like, oh, now there's been two more assassinations. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
how do I process that that is happening at the same time as these things? How do I process that I see people around me taking huge risks to stand in solidarity with Palestine, with Sudan, with Congo? I see people taking these risks, and it's not enough to stop what's happening so far, and trying to hold all that. And yeah, and I think the thing that makes me excited in what you said is that I don't think it's dusk for the whole world, right? Like I think there's something very specific about being in the US
Hmm.
where it's like our dusk might be the thing that allows the sun to rise everywhere else.
Hmm.
And then how do we do that with as much love and care as possible? Is to be like, it's okay, let's sing a lullaby for this nation as it exists currently, and like let something new awaken. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, the we have this unprecedented opportunity to shape the end of empire.
Yes.
And how empires end matters.
Yeah,
Like
it
it
does.
matters. I don't think it's just a like, oh yeah, the whole thing will crumble and that'll be great. Like how the undoing happens.
Yes.
Like when we're in somatic work, right? Like having a container and having a process and having connection and trust so
Yes.
that the undoing and the coming apart and the presence of the fear and the excitement, all of it can be there, is very
Yeah.
different than the kind of intensity that comes from trauma. Trauma also disorganizes things, right? It is also a coming apart. But that's not what we're aiming for. And so I think we have this opportunity to be like, great, this empire is coming to an end.
Hmm.
What is our contribution to that ending? And how can we do that both for people all around the world and for this land, this place, these people who are part of the world?
That's right.
And you're I think these pieces about fear, dread, um, hope all together, I think part of it is not polarizing those things, not trying to push away. Like part of what
Right.
is powerful about the night is there should be some scary shit. Like there are things that are faster. There are things that,
Yes.
I
Yes.
was I was having a
There are snakes.
okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, but that's like a real thing. There's snakes like in the backyard.
And and
Yeah.
I was having this I love nature moment in my backyard the other day, and I saw something moving on the ground, and I looked, and there was this little grasshopper who was being torn apart by ants live. Like one of its
Ooh.
legs was being carried away and it was trying to hop. And I was like, yeah, this is also
Yeah.
part
That's part of
of
it.
life. Uh it's not all sweet. And so part of what we're
Mm.
experiencing and fearing in the night there are things that are happening now and that are coming
Yes.
that are painful,
Yes.
that hurt, that we're not in control of. And
Yeah.
love can also be there in that. And I feel like
Definitely.
part of the lesson that we're being given and this opportunity that we have is like if we can bring love, presence, connection, integrity, even in this,
Yes.
then there's something, and I get excited about this. I'm like, then there's something of actually an unshakable confidence emerges. Not that I
Yes.
know what's going to happen, not that I'm going to be in control, but actually there isn't a single circumstance
Yeah.
that our aliveness is not capable of shining into and shining through. And I think that is something that we're also being given an opportunity for, that like
Yes.
we could come out the other side of this being like, I am unshakably confident.
I really love that. So I love that because there's a way in which the voices that I keep hearing from places that are actually frontline genocidal spots right now,
Mm-hmm.
that sense of resilience, of just like resilience that's, not the like, yeah, keep taking, keep hurting me, but the resilience that's like, we are unflappable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The more you try to take, the less you will receive. Like you cannot take away the humanity is growing in us
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
as years lessons, right? So there's something about that I feel that I'm like, that's been the big lesson. Persist, survive, thrive. Like this thing, and I have said this a few times now, but I'm like, there's some aspect of our humanity, there's some aspect of ourselves that has been fighting for itself since the beginning of time, right? And it has never died. It has never been conquered. Like the part of us that wants to be free has never been conquered and will not, I don't think will be conquered now, which may
Mm-hmm.
mean that there may mean extinction for humans, right? I think about this a lot too, that I'm like, or extinction for humans as the predominant force on the planet, like I'm like, that may not be our path. We may not be mature enough as a species to hold the responsibility that we have taken on, that have assigned ourselves of like, we're gonna run this. I'm like, my friend Michaela Harrison is always like, the whales are also really ready to like step in and take over. Like
Mm.
there's other possibilities. But I'm like, I really think that humans could have such a beautiful experience here. And that I hold on to that, right? Um, so I want to ask you this other piece, um, which is we're in this moment of so much misinformation, and we're in this moment where there's so much underdevelopment, really, of the organizing way, underdevelopment of people's political analysis, and so many of us spend a lot of our time on social media, and we're thus kind of getting shaped into a certain way of being that is actually victim of change. As it basically, in the way that Octavia Butler saw the world, she was like, change is this inevitable force, and we can either be victims of it or we can shape it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the way that most of us are socialized politically still is to be victims of change, to be like, I'm watching this, and the most I can do is rant about it, right? I'm watching this and I can point out the people closest to me who are guilty of it, but it's very hard for people to like lift their gaze, widen their gaze up and sort of see like whole systems are in place. The systems are working through us. There's an analysis of how these things work globally. We're not the only Black people. We're not the only anything. We're not the only
Mm-hmm.
way that this is
Mm-hmm.
not the only way that woman is. This is not the only way that gender is being determined. Like, so moving out of that myopic US thing is one
Mm-hmm.
thing. But then just like you were pointing to, people just don't understand most of how the systems that control us work. And that's intentional. So if you could help people understand one more thing, if everyone could understand something a little better, what do you feel? What do you wish more people understood in this moment?
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And I'm like, my mind goes in so many different directions.
I
And
know.
I'm trying to think, are there pieces that are like around the political and the electoral that would be particularly helpful here?
Yeah, I think, part of why I wanted to come to you is because I see you as someone who understands what it means to move in formation, like to move in relationship, in community, in organizational commitments. I see you as someone who's like, I understand that like we have to build something from the ground up, which means like for most places, like you have to have an idea in a community and then
Mm-hmm.
bring it to the municipal level and then bring it, like I think I guess not to put the words in your mouth, but like there's something that I'm looking for that's like helping people understand like how change grows up from the ground up.
Mm.
and also moving information, right? Like what it means. I've had a lot of people coming to me talking about, well, are you endorsing Kamala, or like what do you da, da, da? And I'm like, I'm an individual, but I move in community. I'm a member of the Working Families Party. They have endorsed Kamala Harris. There was a whole voting process that we all got to be a part of. As an individual, my work is to try to figure out how the different formations that I'm in relationship with are moving, and that is new for me. That still feels new for
Wow.
me,
Uh-huh.
right? Like for a long time, I think I held my American vote as like this precious golden ticket to freedom and democracy and all this stuff. And like, that I just the fight that people get into every 4 years about what their vote means outside the context of what happens for the rest of life and the rest of time. I think that's one of the biggest pieces for me, where I'm just sort of like, there's no thing about you as an individual inside of this kind of system that actually can have impact. That's my thing, right? Is I'm always like, you can say all the things you want or whatever, but like what matters is when you come into relationship with other people and you begin to move as a block or move as a unit or move as a body. Um, and then there can be multiple bodies moving, right? So
Yeah.
for me, I'm very excited. I'm excited about seeing all the people move behind Kamala Harris as in mass. That's like, we understand the assignment, and just being like, oh, what they understand is like, this is a move against fascism, and we understand our assignment there. And then I'm also equally excited about the uncommitted movement and
Mm-hmm.
all the folks who are like, actually hold the phone, hold it, hold it. We're not going to just roll out without talking about this genocide and holding this person. This person is no less accountable. What are we going to do about that? And how do we not leave our Palestinian brothers and sisters to the side, and then all of us also the side, because we understand that we're all interconnected in this. I'm like excited about the duality of both of those things. I don't know
Yeah.
how it resolves, but I'm like, both of those are really good news. Like I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
actually, we need to respect that both of these are legitimate pathways. And then there's, I think, this third space or this third place where I'm like, is it possible to be anti-fascist and anti-genocide in how we move in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I want you to answer. Can you figure it out? Like, tell me.
um, I mean, I think the answer is yes. I think
Mm.
how to do it isn't a formula. It is a thing that in each moment, depending on our positioning,
Mm-hmm.
we have to make the best choices we can, holding both of those things at the same time. So
Uh-huh.
I'm really glad you said the piece about acting in formation. So I am a part of the Carolina Federation,
Yeah.
and we have an endorsement process, just like WFP, who I'm
Yeah.
also part of.
Yeah.
Um, uh, having a process through which
Yeah.
we collectively wrestle with all of these questions
Yeah.
isn't just some formality to figure out who we're going to get behind and then kind of roll out. The
Yeah.
process of actually wrestling is the process of sense making. It's the process of community building, relationship building, power building, and actually what a vote means and what our
Mm.
collective votes mean,
Mm.
each election is different. And actually
Yeah.
understanding what is it, what
Yeah.
leverage do we or don't we have. One of the brilliant things about the uncommitted movement is they were like, where can we collectively have leverage
Yes.
in the existing structures? Not particularly because those structures are the best thing or wonderful or we believe or don't believe in them, as if it's like I believe or I don't believe in Santa. It's like, here's the structure that exists.
I'm a Santa purist
Oh, are
forever.
you?
I believe in Santa. Yeah.
Well, I don't feel
And
like it's
my
a belief.
parents helped me keep that belief going.
Do what you do, girl. Do what you do. I'm just saying that
I'm playing yes, but yeah.
structures aren't about beliefs,
Mm.
right? If we have an assessment around institutions and structures, it's about
Yeah.
terrain. And so
Yeah.
saying there is a river there, there
Yes.
is a pothole there.
Yeah.
These are observations about the terrain that we have to navigate. And uncommitted was like, we
Mm-hmm.
see a chink in the armor. We see a vulnerable place where our people, in particular Arab and Muslim folks, but really all of us who are opposed to genocide, can
Yeah.
intervene on the most powerful empire in the history of this country.
Yeah.
And they were like, it's vulnerable in this primary, in this moment. We're going
Yes.
after it. And the kind of response and impact that they had, I think, was
Yeah.
brilliant because of
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Right. Um, that wasn't my read. That wasn't
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh yeah, pull that out, cookie cutter. Everybody knew that's the thing. The
Yeah.
brilliant organizers in Michigan and around the country had to figure out, given their positionality in this moment, how do
Yes.
you hold anti-fascism and anti-genocide at the same
Yes.
time? Each of us has the same responsibility to
Yeah.
ask those things for our position. And, you know, uh,
Just before you
in
move on, I do want to say tonight the uncommitted movement is having a mass call, not another bomb. And I think the intention of it is really to then to deal with this tangle of like, okay, so now the candidate has shifted and the position on this has not. So now what do we do? And so I think it's at 6 o'clock Eastern. I have it's posted on my page if you scroll down. So I just want people to know like what you're talking about is both this brilliant thing we did in the primaries and it's a brilliant thing that is continuing. So,
And I
mhm.
think I don't know if they're still doing fundraising to get their delegates to the convention. But
Oh, we'll find
I
out.
think the Monday after all the Biden stepped down and endorsed Kamala,
Yeah,
Uncommitted did a call as well.
yeah,
And we're doing fundraising to make sure all their delegates
actually
got to
got
the
there.
convention. And so that's a key thing. And I think they're also asking people to join them in the day of action. I don't remember when it is, but if you have it posted,
Okay,
folks can connect there.
yeah, great. So keep going.
Um, well, I guess the piece about being in formation, I think,
Yeah,
is part of, and the piece about dropping the individualism, I think part of that is being in this period of endings. And
yeah,
I think I and many people I've been connected to, we grew up in this country and we grew up with the story that our vote was an expression of our individuality, or
mm-hmm.
was a form of shopping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even when we came to reject capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, all these different things, we kind of still held on to this liberal idea of my individual vote and, like, don't look over here at the answers on my test and
Mm-hmm. It's
all of that kind
private.
of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like, no, actually, Black people in particular have a history of like, our votes don't belong to us individually.
Right.
And they're not a question of preference and picking out an outfit. Like,
Yeah.
this is actually about strategy and impact. And that is always a part of a collective process. And, you know, how to say this?
Mm.
In one of the traditions I come from, very inspired by the Vietnamese people's struggle for liberation, um, and literally hundreds of years from imperialism from the Chinese to imperialism to the French to U.S. imperialism, and
Mm.
they developed this perspective of the protracted struggle or the long arc. And the understanding is the first thing that we have to acknowledge is, in terms of institutional power, our opponents have the upper hand. Like, the distinction of power is
Yeah.
pretty massive.
Yes.
And, one of the things that was very sobering for me was how quickly Biden's tune changed when the donors decided that they were going to stop donating.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's critical for us to see that our movements played a very important role in pushing about what's going on. And
Yeah.
the leverage that people with the massive amounts of wealth had in being like, Biden, you got to go,
Yeah.
was almost like
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, and so when we think about power as the ability to achieve purpose, we
Yes.
clearly got to see that kind of relative sense of power. And so the protracted struggle orientation
Mm.
says, well, let's start with that acknowledgement and say it's gonna take time for us to shift that.
Yeah.
And the moment that we're in is part of a longer arc, is part of that protracted struggle. And there's kind of these
Mm.
three phases. The first phase, you're on the defense. Your opponents are stronger than you.
Yeah.
Slowly you build up during
Yeah.
that phase by not taking on kind of fights where you're like, this is gonna decide the war if we just win this one. And I
Yeah.
think this election is absolutely essential. It's absolutely decisive. I think we need to be fighting in it.
Yeah.
And to have the idea that if we win this,
We
we'll
win.
be good,
Yeah.
and we should burn bridges with our comrades, or we should be out here denouncing each other, or any of that, as if we're
Hmm.
not in a long-term fight, I think
Hmm.
is an illusion. I think
Yeah.
it's an illusion to think that if we defeat Trump three, four times, that we're going to be done. We're in a
Yeah.
period of the end of empire. And so
Yes.
this type of struggle, I think, is
Hmm.
going to continue maybe another decade or so, right?
Hmm.
So preparing for that, building up our forces, and organizing at the local and the state level, to me, uh, is really about the scale at which I think so far we have figured out how to actually institutionalize and organize ourselves. I don't think we're yet at a national scale. I think Working Families Party is an exciting kind of advanced guard on that.
Yeah.
But the right wing in this country has control over more states than any other force. And we are still trying to figure out how do folks with our values lead masses of people.
Yes.
We're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate like every single word out of your mouth and all the thoughts. Because it really does feel like this, the protracted struggle piece feels so important to be like, oh, we're in this long-term work. There's not going to be quick fixes. And I think that saying that as lovingly as possible to people feels so important right now because we're tired, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
can feel exhaustion, trying to I think that at least, yeah, I feel like in the last 5, 6 years, particularly, there's been so much of a like, we just got to get through this part and then we got to rest. Like there's this promise of like a break or like if we just can get through here, then like something will be a little easier. And then it keeps not happening. Instead, it gets harder. And so I think for me, part of what I've been in the practice of is like, how do I stagger even inside myself? Like, how do I stagger the attention I bring in, the attention I turn in? How do I stagger the relationships? Like the way that I build my relationships with people. I'm like, every relationship doesn't have to be in the hardest place of building at all times, right? I'm like, sometimes I can just be like, babe, can we just coast and like, have some good sex, have some good food, and have watch Love Island tonight or whatever. And then like next time we can have a big relationship conversation. Like I just keep being like, where are the places where there's some ease, right? And I feel like in this political system right now, we don't have that. And I think if we can acknowledge that it's like we're in a long-term thing. So then for me, being in formation, being in collective space actually really helps with that. That I'm like, okay, inside of all of this, it's not my job to figure out every single thing.
Right.
Inside of this protracted struggle, like part of why I became a paying member of Working Families Party, part of why I keep looking at, part of why I was like, I'm excited about being a part of Black Organizing for Leadership and Dignity. I can't come to every gathering, but I trust the leadership in there. And under pressure, I will be like, what do I need to do? Or someone has been working on this while I've been working on something else. And that allows us inside of this struggle to not be carrying every single part of the work or not to be tied into formation. So to not have a sense of things moving at all. And there's a mycelial aspect to this kind of thing. When you talked about like first recognizing we're on defensive ground and then we've got to grow. And I think what's hard in this moment where everything is visibilized and everyone's about getting attention and getting eyes on them or eyes on us to be like this growing, actually a lot of growing happens out of sight It happens in real time, in real relationships with real people. It happens at city council meetings. It happens door to door. It happens in small circles in your living room. And you're talking about Vietnam. I think about the Zapatistas.
Hmm.
I think about the Zapatistas. I think about that 10-year period leading up to 1994 that people were like, we want to do something massive, but it means we're going to have to go door to door and share the vision with people. Like a lot of people have to actually have a shared sense of where we're trying to get to, because it can't just be what we're trying to fight against. We'll always be in this position. We'll never bring ourselves up into, you know, centered spine to be able to move forward. So I really appreciate the framework and the invitation, like get in community, get information, like that's actually the way to start to move.
Hmm.
Um, so given all of that, I think I hear it woven into what you're saying, but want to ask it explicitly, what is right action right now from where you're sitting? If someone's like, okay, so is it to vote? Is it to join something real quick for these next few months? Or like what is the right action that you would invite people into?
Um, I think joining a serious independent political organization is decisive. That will include taking
Yeah.
action together.
Yep.
But being a part of that institution, I think, is pretty key.
Yeah.
And I think the most powerful ones are usually state-based.
Yeah.
And what I mean by independent political organization, I mean people who combine transformative organizing,
Yes.
the on the ground issue based fights, building up leaders and members who are directly impacted by the things we're trying to transform.
Yeah.
Tie that to electoral organizing,
Yeah.
and tie that to the kind of political education and worldview and culture work, right? I think those three things
Yeah.
and are able to function inside and outside of the electoral arena, inside and outside of the state, inside and outside of the Democratic Party, who have that nimbleness. So that's what
That's
I
right.
mean by independent political organization. And WFP is an example of that at the national level.
Yeah.
Um, and brings people together often who are at the state level
Yeah.
as well. So if you're around the country, that's a great place to start. But you can
Great.
look into who are the state-based organizations. Is it Florida Rising where I am? Is it Ohio Organizing Collaborative? Here in
Mm.
North Carolina, we have the Carolina Federation, Down Home, and Siembra, right? So there
Yeah.
are different organizations who are doing this, but I think joining that is
Mm-hmm.
more important than any particular one action, because the fight
Mm-hmm.
against the right in this country and the fight to unleash the hearts and minds of our people isn't going to be decided in one go.
Yeah.
And we
And
do have to fight in this round. I
yes.
would even say voting against Trump in this election is not enough. I think we need to be asking other people in our lives
Yes.
to take that action, and getting to the point of taking that action is actually about paying attention to and being in relationship with the frustration, cynicism, despair, confusion
Yes.
that people are in. And so it's not just like go find somebody and try to browbeat them about participating in the election. It's about
Yeah.
who do you have relationship with, who you can bring out of isolation and cynicism and into
Yeah.
collective action. So I think
Mm.
that's the the actions that we need to be taking in this
Mm-hmm.
moment.
I really appreciate this. You know, it feels so clear, right? It's just like, yes, get information, like find the place. And I will offer, as someone who's like, I've never been a good joiner. You know this about me. Like I'm always sort of like, I like you guys. I like that. Ooh, oh, I like that too. For me, part of it has been having my resources, like joining things where I'm like, I'm pouring resources towards this.
Mhm.
I'm still being my artist self, but I'm pouring resources into this space. And then I follow leadership and I take leadership and right, I'm like, I think getting people to understand that like you can join things, you can support things in a lot of different ways. That all organizing is not necessarily door knocking, though that is absolutely needed. And I also really appreciate how you just said a vote against Trump, because I think that this has been a part of this debate process, for me, that I always get surprised, because I always think we have a collective understanding that politicians ain't shit. I'm
Mhm.
like, but we know, like, I think back in 2003, 2004, in that electoral process, I was part of this thing called the League of Pissed Off Voters, and we put together this book, How to Get Stupid White Men Out of Office. And one of the biggest things to me was like, we train our politicians to lie to us. We don't ask them to be good people. We don't ask them to have integrity. We ask them to lie to us and put on a specific performance. And we decide, it's basically like who did the best lip sync, at the end of the RuPaul Drag Race or show or whatever. It's like, it's very much like entertainment. We're looking for a certain kind of entertainment. And
Mhm.
so then in moments like this, we're like, oh, I keep seeing people like, yeah, here's how much I love Kamala all of a sudden overnight. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. To me, I'm just like, I don't have to like her as a person. I don't have to think she's got a great laugh. I don't have to identify even, like her Black woman mixed raceness to my Black woman mixed raceness. Like, to me, that's not what's necessary in this moment. What's necessary in this moment is like, what is the best strategy I have to stop Trump from coming into office, because Trump is a force that takes empire, to me, into more authoritarian control over those of us who are trying to fight against it. Like, it's very specific, right? I'm like, there's a lot of people who are actually fine with empire. There's
Mhm.
so many people who are actually they're fine with it, they're benefiting from it, whatever's happening. But I'm like, there's a lot of our folks, who are trans folks, a lot of our folks who are Black folks, a lot of our folks who are immigrants, a lot of our folks who are in this country right now struggling. And I'm like, the disappearance of all those people under this next administration, the next Trump administration, weakens our capacity to shape this transition,
Yeah.
right? It weakens our capacity to love and hold each other and trust each other. Because I really look at people, I'm like, how can you trust me if I say you're one of the communities I'll throw over the boat when the time comes? I'm like, no, no, no. How do we hold each other's hands in this? How do we hold on to each other as much as we can in this? And to me, that stopping Trump is the thing that we have to come together to do. And I'm like, I don't have to get excited about another candidate. I will say, when I was casting my little spell about Biden, because I was like, Biden definitely can't beat Trump, and that definitely is
Yeah.
not going to work. And so I
Yeah.
cast my spell, and I was like, if Biden steps down, I'll step up. That's my little spell, right? And so then Biden stepped down, and then Kamala was the person. And I was like, okay. And for a moment, I was like, do I have to go pro Kamala? I was like, no, I just have to say, we have another option that is actually a viable option to win. And, I have gotten a lot of people sliding in my DMs like, well, what about Cornell? What about Jill Stein? What about Claudia and Karina? And I'm like, I love everything that all of them are saying. They're brilliant. Like, I see deep alignment in the values with all those people. If there was some magic Avenger move that they could all make to come together and have a viable chance to beat Trump, I would jump on that boat, right?
Mhm.
And I keep, like, that's my truth. And I don't see a viable chance for them to actually have the office. And so for me, that's my stance, right? So I'm like, I want to know who can actually claim that, like, as you said, we're talking about claiming territory. And I also think, like, long term, I'm like, I can't imagine telling people 3 generations down from now, like, what did you do under that pressure? Well, I just made myself feel really great. I voted for something that made me feel really great by myself instead of moving in formation. And this piece around moving in formation is hard. Like, I'm like, I still don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm like, I'm looking for the most viable strategy to do the thing that I think needs to be done at this moment in history, rather than the thing that feels best for my politic, right? Even though it is
Uh-huh.
in the long term, the thing
Hmm.
that feels best for my politic, the thing that feels best for my politic is being able to have this moment of letting go of empire, or moving past or moving out of empire, be one in which our folks have the most chance to shape what comes next. And so I'm like, I believe in being ready. I want us to take on governance. I want us to really be willing to take on leadership. And maybe that's another thing I want to ask you about, Sendolo, because taking on leadership right now is really scary. And people are not acknowledging that like anyone who steps up to take a stance on anything is at risk of being torn down by our own people. Not,
Mm,
it's like we have these external threats, but what's happening, what we do to each other is so much more vicious in a way.
mhm,
And my belief is in community. My belief is in connectiveness. My belief is in holding each other, letting the systems go, but holding on to each other, and then
mhm,
growing what each other means. Like, I want that to be the thing that's getting bigger and bigger. So when we say that they're not like us, they not like us means those imperialist, colonizer, capitalists are not like us. And we're shrinking the amount of space that they can take up in the world. And that we're growing we're growing the people who are like, I'm willing to change, right?
mhm, mhm.
And that's like my belief, and I feel like I'm trying to protect it inside of this. So maybe that's the question I have for you is how are you protecting your beliefs, your fundamental beliefs inside of this moment?
Ooh.
Mm,
Well, I think I want to start by just saying the leadership piece is real, and
mm,
um I was remarking to myself and to a friend the other day. I was like, "Oh, I have this story. I'm like, I'm a hermit. I don't hang out with people like that." And when I trace it, I'm like, that wasn't actually always true. That was a
mm.
consequence of basically taking unpopular positions. When I first started doing electoral organizing, many of the folks who I came into movement with were like, "What are you doing?"
What are you doing, girl?
And
Mhm.
actually the intensity and the heartbreak and the pain of that, my response was actually to shrink connection
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
actually to become more and more like a smaller inner circle, which
Yes.
the dramatic way I did it maybe wasn't necessary, but it's what I had,
Listen.
knew how to do at the time.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, well, there is some lesson around discernment
Yes.
about a community can be used as this word as if everybody in the community is good to each other.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's real different. The same way that people act like family means everybody is good to each other. Like
That's right.
discerning who cares for my tenderness and whose tenderness do I care for is its own thing. Like we got to discern that. So I think that's one thing is like who your
Mhm.
people
That's right.
who your people, get
That's
very,
right.
very clear about who that is. And then, I had and continuously have to touch and be vulnerable to the aspects of me that really want approval, right? Like
Yeah.
I can go on
Yeah.
and on about how people are mean and petty and vicious and blah, blah, blah. And that's because I'm longing for them to say, it's okay. We still love you. You can disagree with us. Come on over
Yeah.
here. And the flip side of the
Mm,
fear around stepping out as a leader is the longing
mm,
to belong.
yeah.
And part of leadership includes being tender to that longing but making a decision, making a discernment of is it worth
Yeah.
troubling belonging
Yes.
so that the way that we belong together could be different. And I'm thinking about uh Rabbi Abraham Heschel
Mm,
and his work on the prophets.
hmm.
And the meanest people to the prophets is they people. Like,
Listen.
and
Yes.
that's part of what prophets do. Like
Yes.
communities give birth to prophets who agitate them.
Yes.
Like prophets aren't pleasant people,
Yeah.
you know? They
Yeah.
come and they disrupt things. And many of us often, we don't want to see the ending.
Mm-mm.
We don't want to touch the grief. We don't
Mm-mm.
want to touch the loss. We don't want to look at what might need to change. And prophets are like, hey, look
That's
what's going
right.
on. And
Yeah.
it's much easier to go after those people
Hmm.
than to touch the things that are coming to an end.
Yeah.
So Part of how I protect the things that I believe in is to really tend my own belonging with the people who I truly belong to,
Yeah.
and to tend my grief about the end of belongings
Yeah.
that are a consequence of taking stands
Yes.
that others don't agree with, and staying tender in that. I think there's a way of being like, well,
Yeah.
since y'all gonna be mean, I don't care. I don't care if you don't like me, and I'm just gonna say this thing and I'm gonna attack your ideas. And I think
Yeah.
staying, me, the work I do, the organization I'm in, we are fighting against Trump.
Yeah.
And, we have to do an endorsement process now that things have
Yeah.
changed. And so I can't say where our organization is going to land until our members say
Yeah.
where the organization is going to land. But the wrestling that we did um, in the first part of the year
Hmm.
was strong. It was intense, but
Yes.
there was no cruelty in it. And there was no like, I know my perspective is the
Yeah.
absolute truth, and anybody who disagrees with me is a friend of mine, Meg Bolger, says there's the ignorant, stupid, evil progression.
That's
And that
right.
wasn't the attitude. Folks
That's
were
right.
like, we know so much is at stake. We know there's so much complexity. I'm
Yes.
taking a stand, not because I'm omniscient,
Yes.
but because I'm willing to take the risk to care. And I see you doing the same thing. Let's
Yeah.
wrestle together.
This is it. Sandola, I love that, right? Because I think that this is the piece that, again, I'm like, I love the way that I use social media. Like, I'm like, I feel like I do it about as best as it can be done, for me. Like, I'm like, I've curated what I see, and I really follow things that I respect. And I no, I don't argue. I'm like, I'm not arguing with trolls. I'm not whatever. But I feel like part of that is because my offline communities hold me accountable
Yeah.
and respect me and can hold that discernment of respecting me, even if we are holding different opinions, right? And I have one long-term friend who we've gone back and forth every election cycle, basically, because this person's always like, I'm voting for this third party, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, great. Um, and I'm not gonna do that. And here's why. And or I'm not going to advocate for it. And then sometimes we'll switch. And each time we sit, it's almost always we land in a different place. And then we sit and we talk about why and what it means to us and where we're coming from, what it means to us this time. And it was so interesting because this time, in this offline friendship, this space, I came and I was like, okay, like I felt something open, a new possibility, a door crack open with Biden stepping down. I was like, I feel excited and I can feel some excitement happening. Like I can feel some moves happening that people are just like, oh, we actually have a chance against Trump this time. And
Mhm.
so I turned to my friend and I was, reaching out and I was like expecting like to sort of be batted down, right? Of like, this ain't shit, whatever. And my friend was like, I'm hitting the streets. I'm door knocking. I'm making phone calls. No, I don't like her, but I understand what this moment is. I understand my assignment. I'm going to do this. Right. And I like literally, I was shocked for the first time ever. We're both like, oh, I think we're aligned on what it takes to get through this moment, even though past this moment, I can see us going in different directions again. Right.
Mhm.
Um, and in mostly because I'm like, I'm really interested in the third party model of something like a working families party that is, moving the system differently than I
Mhm.
am a single third party that's not like I really want to change the whole structure. I'm a post nationalist. I just have a different orientation to the whole thing. But anyway, for me, it just feels really exciting to be like, oh, those are my offline relationships where I have really in-depth conversations. And then I
Mhm.
have offline formations and groups and places where I'm having these conversations with people and letting myself grow. Let it, I also, that piece you said around like not coming in and being like, I just have the right position and that's just the way. That's been so important for me in this moment is to be like, we're on new ground and like everything we've ever done before has gotten us here. Everything we've done before has, especially for the last 50 years, has just given ground away. Like a ton of it has given ground away. settling for surface level false solutions has given ground away. So how do we actually commit to really gaining territory, right? And what is gaining territory? What are we gaining territory for? For me, I'm like, I'm gaining territory for communities to be able to be self-determined and in right relationship with their land. I'm gaining territory for people who are not trying to resolve every problem through violence. I'm gaining territory for abolitionists. I'm gaining territory for indigenous worldviews and ways of being to actually return us into right relationship with the land and each other. Like, so it's really, I love this question. I think this might even be a good question for people to be asking themselves. It's like, in your lifetime, what are you gaining territory for?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And how are you navigating the terrain and who are you navigating it with? That you do not have to be alone, even hermits, even those of us, you and I are, we are such good friends who live our lives as hermits. And we'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, girl, I love you.
Hey,
I
girl.
know we're not even 2 miles apart, but I love you. That's just what I want you to know. And under pressure, I would follow you anywhere, under pressure, I would want to be building with you, right?
Yeah.
And we're under pressure now, and here we are, right? Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
so grateful for time in different formations where we were able to wrestle, and I could expect us to continue to, right?
Yeah.
So I think that piece, I'm really grateful you said that because I just keep feeling like part of the way through this needle is to be like, I can have respect for people who have a different perspective than me or a different strategy than me without throwing them down that path of ignorant evil, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that that's everything I wanted to cover. Is there anything else that you want to say to the folks before we pop off? Pop
Um,
off. Pop off. Pop off though
hey,
also.
hey, hey. Um, uh, I am very inspired by the independence movement of Guinea-Bissau and
Mm,
Amilcar Cabral. And
always.
there's this thing that happened. They were fighting armed struggle against Portuguese colonialism, and
Mm,
some other folks around the world were like, how are y'all doing a guerrilla struggle? Y'all ain't got no mountains. Like mountains is what people need to be able to engage in those struggles. And one of the quotes I love from Cabral is, our people are our mountains.
yes.
And when you were saying the thing about territory, ultimately, like, we ourselves and our actions and our conduct and our relationships are the terrain on
That's right.
which everything else is happening.
That's right.
And, the piece about third party and collective electoral action, I think there's a way that it can get framed as
Yeah.
being about who do you believe in, who do you trust, etc. The frame that I use is, uh, where are our people? And how
Mm,
successful have we been in moving them and moving together with them? And the reality
mm,
is, at this moment in time,
yeah.
as corrupt and engaged in empire as the Democratic Party is, uh,
Mm,
that party moves more of our people, the people who we
yes.
say
Yes.
are our folks.
Mm,
If you actually ask how many millions of people, not the
yeah.
majority,
Yeah.
but millions of people take action together. And we have to be humble enough to ask the question, what is happening for those
Mm-hmm.
folks?
Yes.
And, you know, I'm going to be careful because our organization hasn't made an endorsement, but I will say Biden moving out of the way
Yes.
did something
Yes.
where new energy is coming forward. We don't have to believe in empire. We don't have to support Israel. We don't have to do any of those things to ask ourselves the question, what's happening with large numbers of our people
Uh-huh.
that I can be listening to,
Yeah.
attentive to? And
Yeah.
then asking ourselves the question, what would it take for people with our values to be
Yeah.
able to move in relationship at scale similar or greater than that. And
Mhm.
part of the standard I set for myself is
Mhm.
if I believe that empire is not what our people deeply need,
Mhm.
what do I need to do such that more people are saying yes to our values and our actions than to empire? And
Yes.
that's the question that's really in front of us, not how do we critique and debate
Yeah.
empire, but how do we, you say this all the time, become more irresistible
Mhm.
than
It's
empire?
Tony K.
And
Bambara. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And
Yes.
I think third party action kind of ignores that question of
Mhm.
where are our people moving together and what would it take from us to move at the scale that we can block the things that are coming at us and
Yes.
build the new things that we're trying to do. And I think as a parting thing, the
Yeah.
folks at Convergence Magazine have been really
Yeah.
moving this frame of Black and Build, which I guess Ashley was bringing last time.
Yeah.
I'm just bring that back.
Yeah. I think it's really helpful. And I think it's going to be coming up, I'm talking to people about some kind of people's space, some kind of space for this conversation to be happening. And I think I'm like, we actually have really powerful frameworks for how to move through this time. I'm really excited about, I'm really excited about Convergence Magazine. I'm really excited about Movement Generation. I'm really excited about a lot of the folks that I'm seeing be like, oh, there's ways we can understand this moment. And we don't have to be clueless and clue free. And
Mm.
I really love the thing because this has actually always been my thing with movement, right? Is I'm like, we have to trust our people. And that means sometimes we have to trust our people. We have to go and listen to the questions, right? I'm like, we have to trust that our people have questions and they have questions not because they're ignorant, but because they don't know. We haven't shared with them something that helps them understand how what we're offering is actually going to take care of them and their family and I think the thing that many of us, I know when I joined movement, it was like, well, it's not going to happen in our lifetimes. We're fighting for something far beyond that. I think most of our folks now are like, I can't do that. I can't live
Mm.
in a sacrificial life for the
Mm-hmm.
sake of some future generation. Because what I see behind me is a thread of sacrificial lives that we're living for some future generation. But here I am still struggling and in some ways worse off than many of my ancestors. How? That our people have legitimate questions, having poured themselves into various things. And so I'm like trusting that people's questions actually matter has always been that matters to me, right? That I'm like, when people show up and they're like, it's just this. I'm like, we already know that. We know that this system, empire is evil, right? Empire, we've never had a beneficial empire. So we know that that's the situation we're in, which means that everyone who can achieve power within it is tied into that. We understand that. We understand, um, we understand that like our folks are really tired and our folks are really like entertained and like the way that we move our energy. I keep watching right now, I'm watching the Olympics, both
Mm.
the Olympics themselves and watching how people, it's just sort of like, fuck Empire, USA. I'm like, wow, we can do anything. I mean, we can, we have just all this space. And so I'm just sort of like, I'm always thinking about that irresistible piece. Tony K. Bambara offered us that cultural workers, particularly, that's our job, is to figure out like, how do I make this seem more beautiful to you and more possible? How do I make it seem like something you could be a part of and you could do? And the thing I do want to say is, I have many people in my life who have never, and no matter how many invitations I've given, have never gotten on a call or made a step towards organizing, who in the last 2 weeks or whatever, is it just 1 week? Oh my
I
God. Anyway, I'm like, I cannot keep up. But anyway, have taken action, have jumped on a call, have committed to some action. So I'm like, we have to pay attention. I love that you said that. We just have to pay attention to our people and be like, something is happening that is allowing people to take action. When people take action and get disappointed, we want to be right there and be like, yeah, you took an action and we're still an empire and here's some other paths, right?
Mhm.
Like, I'm like, yeah. So anyway, I love you. I love this conversation with you. I always learn so much every time I'm in your presence. I feel more grounded and more possibility inside of the chaos.
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And I really like the idea of yeah, your leadership, it's like your leadership, my leadership, looking at Maurice's leadership, looking at Ashley's leadership. Like I like looking around and being like, I actually think we know a lot of the people that have pieces of this. And we just have to keep conversing with each other, figuring out how these pieces, fit in. So I love you. And what I'm going to do, just so everyone knows, is I'm going to post this conversation. I already posted the first one. I'm going to go back and fix the details of it because I was like, I just got to get here. But we're going to post this one as well. And then all of the conversation will be posted in the How to Survive the End of the World podcast feed. So we have someone right now. We brought on an extra producer because we're supposed to be on break. So I brought on an extra producer to take these conversations and flip them into podcast content. So if you have people who are not on Instagram, they'll also be able to access it. And we'll keep going. I have Farai Chidea and Nalini Stamp and Movement Generation all still coming in this series. So I'm excited. Movement Generation will be in a couple days, maybe Thursday, maybe tomorrow. Is that tomorrow? Anyway, look at me in time. I don't know. I'm a mountain. What can I say? All right.
Love you
I
so
love you.
much.
Bye,
Wow.
friend.